Growing up, I always felt like I was walking on eggshells around my older brother Trent. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. At first, it was small things, like him forcing me to clean his room or do his homework while he played outside. I told myself it was just brother stuff, normal sibling behavior. But it didn't stop there. When I finally stood up for myself and refused to do his assignments, I came home to find my room completely trashed. My clothes were ripped, my books torn, and the few things I cherished were broken. I was crushed, but still I told myself he was just having a bad day. I kept quiet. When he broke my arm during a fight because I wouldn't lend him money, I cried and told my parents. My dad looked at me and said, "Trent loves you too much to ever hurt you." Then he called me a liar. That's when I knew I was completely alone in that house. I stayed silent from that day on, letting Trent do what he wanted. At 16, I caught him stealing cash from Mom's purse. I knew better than to say anything. Snitching meant pain. A month later, I overheard Dad asking him why he came home reeking of weed at 6 a.m. Trent just said, "I'm an adult, I'll do what I want." No punishment followed. Instead, Dad passed him the salt at dinner like nothing happened. I felt invisible. That night, something in me broke. A week later, I moved in with a friend's family who lived down the block. I left a note explaining everything. My parents never came looking. They never called. It was like they didn't care, or maybe they did and just didn't want the truth. I stayed away for 5 years. I built a life, worked a stable job, tried to find peace. Then one day, out of the blue, my mom called crying. She said Trent was stuck in Colombia and had been robbed by his friends. She passed the phone to my dad, who said Trent needed $12,000 for a ransom or things would get worse. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe guilt. Maybe I just wanted closure. I wired the money, thinking this was the end. But it wasn't. A few days later, another call came, this time asking for $6,000 more. They said he had been kidnapped again. I couldn't help anymore. My savings were gone. I had sold my car to pay off student loans. When I refused, my parents cursed me out and told me I was no longer part of the family. 3 weeks later, they somehow reached me at work. They said Trent had been arrested in Colombia for drug trafficking and was facing 25 years. But I heard something strange. In the background, I recognized Trent's voice. They weren't in Colombia. They were calling from home. It had all been a lie. The kidnapping. The ransom. Even the arrest. I froze in shock. Then rage took over. I collected every message, every bank transaction, every voicemail. I made a folder and named it Family Scam. I contacted the fraud department at my bank. I checked passport databases and discovered that Trent hadn't left the country in over a year. His Instagram showed him at local bars and games during the same time he was supposedly in Colombia. I forwarded everything to the bank and the U.S. Embassy. A representative confirmed there was no record of anyone named Trent from our family being detained in Colombia. I confronted my parents with the evidence. They said the embassy was lying. They doubled down and tried to turn the rest of the family against me. My aunts and uncles began calling, accusing me of abandoning Trent. That's when I revealed the truth. I posted everything, documents, embassy confirmation, photos, passport records, in a family group chat. One by one, the truth shattered their lies. My aunt had sent $2,000. My uncle had sent $3,000. My cousin had given $1,500. Even my grandmother had sent $5,000. Altogether, over $25,000 had been scammed from the family. Trent finally joined a video call pretending to be in prison. But someone noticed he was wearing the same shirt from an Instagram post taken just 2 days earlier. The scam collapsed. My uncle went to my parents' house demanding the money back. They refused to open the door. He called the police and filed a fraud report. Soon, other reports followed. I took my evidence to a detective. She confirmed it wasn't their first scam. A cousin had been tricked into paying $3,000 for a fake cancer treatment. The more we looked, the more we found. Years of deception. Fake scholarships. Bogus car accidents. False emergencies. each aimed at stealing from those closest to them. They had weaponized love and trust. They weren't just manipulative, they were criminals. I was 25 when I realized that my silence had become my biggest prison. For years, I had carried the weight of being the family scapegoat, the one who was always blamed when things went wrong, the one expected to fix everything without question. My brother Trent had drained our family of empathy long before he ever drained it of money. Even as a kid, he was cruel in quiet ways, hiding my shoes before school, deleting my homework files, blaming me when things broke. But our parents never saw it. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. They saw Trent as the golden child, the charismatic one, the boy with potential who just needed a little guidance. So every time I stood up for myself, they told me I was overreacting. That I was jealous. That I was trying to tear the family apart. By the time I moved out, I had internalized that narrative so deeply I didn't even tell anyone why I left. I just packed a bag and slipped away one night after work, moved into my friend's spare room, and started building a life without them. For 3 years, I didn't go home. Didn't call. Didn't respond to messages. I worked 2 jobs, went back to school part-time, and tried to believe that cutting them off was the right choice. But guilt has a sneaky way of creeping in. Especially when you've been raised to believe that family is everything, even when that family destroys you. So when the call came about Trent being stranded overseas, part of me didn't even hesitate. $12,000. More than I had ever wired anyone in my life. Money I didn't really have, but somehow I found a way. I pulled from savings, sold my laptop, postponed my rent. I thought I was helping a brother in danger. I thought this was redemption. But the lies didn't stop. They escalated. Another $6,000. Then requests for gift cards. Then please to not involve the embassy because it would make things worse. It wasn't until I saw Trent's Instagram post, smiling at a bar in our hometown, that the truth punched me in the chest. They had never left. They had never even planned to. The entire story was manufactured, a scam tailored to manipulate the only person who still believed in second chances. I froze. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours, watching the comments roll in under Trent's photo. Good to see you home, bro. Same bar, same seat. And then I cracked. I gathered every text, every voice message, every transfer confirmation. I called my bank, filed a fraud report. I reached out to the embassy, who confirmed that no such case had ever existed. And then I did what I should have done years ago. I exposed them. Created a shared drive called Family Scam, and invited every relative who had ever sent them money. I uploaded screenshots, voice recordings, bank statements. The reactions came like thunder. Shock. Anger. Grief. My cousin had sent $1,500. My aunt, $3,000. Even our grandmother, living on a fixed income, had given them $5,000, her emergency fund, her medical savings, gone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, watching the messages come in from people who had been hurt the same way I had been lied to, used, discarded. That's when we found out about the other scams. The fake car crash. The fabricated eviction notice. The terminal diagnosis Trent had used on another cousin to get her wedding savings. It had all been part of a pattern. Each lie tailored to the person they were targeting. Each dollar spent on luxuries while their victims skipped meals and canceled dreams. One relative called the police. Another filed a civil suit. I brought everything to a private investigator who confirmed that they had done this for years. Not just to family, but to neighbors, coworkers, church members. It was bigger than we thought. And I felt both sickened and relieved. Relieved that I wasn't crazy. That I hadn't been the problem. That the abuse had been real, and that I wasn't alone anymore. I changed my number. Filed a restraining order. Started seeing a therapist who specialized in financial abuse and family manipulation. And slowly, I began to rebuild. I got a new job. Made new friends. Met someone who didn't flinch when I told him the story. He just held my hand and said, "I'm glad you got out." And for the first time, I believed that maybe I deserved that kind of love. The kind that doesn't come with conditions or guilt trips. The kind that doesn't ask you to prove your worth through pain. My parents tried to contact me again, through burner phones, fake accounts, even mutual acquaintances. But I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on building something they could never steal. Peace. It came slowly. In quiet mornings. In home-cooked meals shared with people who didn't want anything from me. In birthdays celebrated without obligation. And now, every time I think of Trent's face, smiling in that Instagram photo, I remind myself that I gave him a chance. That I believed. And that choosing myself wasn't betrayal. It was survival. I had once wired my abuser $12,000 out of love. Now I was investing in myself. And for the first time, that felt like enough. I used to think healing meant forgetting. I thought maybe if I just moved far enough away or blocked enough numbers, the pain would stop showing up in my chest every time I heard my dad's name. But that's not how it worked. Healing looked a lot more like learning to stand still when a memory hit, breathing through it, and telling myself the truth. They did it, they lied, they stole, and they never once apologized, and I am not to blame for any of it. For a long time, I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for falling for the fake documents, the voicemails, the desperate tears, but that anger was part of their conditioning too. They taught me to doubt myself, to feel guilty for saying no. To think love meant sacrificing my own well-being. Undoing that took years, and every time I told my story, every seminar, every podcast interview, every support group I sat in, I got stronger. I saw other survivors nod when I spoke, people who had sent money to siblings for fake cancer treatments, who had paid rent for emergencies that never existed, who had drained retirement accounts, because family helps family. And when I shared how it ended for me, the trial, the sentencing, the healing, I saw something light up in them, hope. It became a kind of mission, not revenge, not spite, just truth and prevention. I started a second branch of our nonprofit just for adult children of manipulative families. We partnered with legal aid to help people file fraud reports, with banks to flag suspicious patterns. We helped them document, protect, and escape. Some of them were still living under the same roof as their abusers, and when they finally walked out with their heads high, I cried every time, because I remembered being that person, too afraid, ashamed, unsure if freedom was even allowed. And now I was on the other side. I never spoke to my parents again after that final letter, not even when they tried to appeal their sentences or send me apologies through other people. I had made my boundary. And I stuck to it, even when it was hard, even when part of me still wished they'd change, because the truth is, they didn't want to be better, they wanted to be obeyed. There's a difference. The nonprofit grew fast. We got featured in local news, then national. I sat on panels about family abuse and financial trauma. One evening, after a speech, a woman in the audience approached me. She looked just like my mom, same eyes, same tone, but she said, "My daughter won't talk to me. She says I manipulated her." Your story, it sounded like mine. But I don't want to be like your parents. What do I do? I didn't have a perfect answer. But I told her this. You start by listening. By accepting that what they say hurt them, really did hurt them. And then you ask what they need to feel safe. It's not a guarantee they'll come back, but it's the only way they might. She cried. She thanked me that night. I cried too, because I realized something. Even if my parents never changed, maybe someone else's would, and that meant it was all worth it. When my daughter turned 5, she made me a card that said, "Thank you for being the safest place." I kept it on my desk, because that's the legacy I want to pass down. Not guilt, not control, not silence, but safety. Love that doesn't come with conditions. Family that heals instead of hurts. And truth that doesn't hide in the shadows. I didn't just survive, I built something beautiful from the ashes, and every day, I choose to live in that light.